The New York Mets retired Darryl Strawberry's number 18 on Saturday. The question now is which jersey will be retired next? We'll talk about it all on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Prior to Steve Cohen purchasing the New York Mets, there was a very simple criteria for getting your jersey retired. Go into Cooperstown with the Mets cap, then we'll retire your jersey. Tom Seaver, of course, was the most obvious jersey retirement ever, and it seemed like that was going to be it. There would be one jersey retired in perpetuity. That would be the only one that would ever get that honor. And then Mike Piazza went into the Hall of Fame as a Met, and Piazza gets his jersey retired. And then again, it felt like that was going to be it. Steve Cohen comes in, and in 4 years, we've had 5 jersey retirements, more than tripling the amount of jerseys that have been retired. First Jerry Koosman, then Keith Hernandez, then Willie Mays, with Willie Mays being more of a New York baseball jersey retirement, but still. And then this year, Doc and Darryl. And I think it has been a very good message to send to embrace the history of the New York Mets. And the events have all been fantastic, but and this one too, I gotta acknowledge, like Darryl Strawberry had a great speech. The montage video was awesome. Seeing all the 86 Mets rolling was great. The in-game interviews with the players, like the whole broadcast was exactly what a Mets fan who knows the history wants to see. And so what I'm about to say, I'm not trying to make it small in any way, but what I will say is, while the Mets were righting or wrong with all these jersey retirements, I almost feel like the one that resonated most with the fan base at large was Keith Hernandez. And now part of this could just be a blind spot from my own vantage point, because I was in the ballpark for that one. So I could feel it more being there, right? Than you probably can feel it when you're on the couch watching it. But I think Keith Hernandez was so special because he talks to you every summer. He's the voice that you he's the soundtrack to your summer with Gary Cohen and Ron Darling. Like, even though Ron Darling didn't have the career that Dwight Gooden had with the Mets, even though he didn't reach the same heights, if they retired Ron Darling's jersey because he's the Mets broadcaster, I think it might resonate a little bit more. And there was part of me watching this and also watching the Dwight Gooden one. I hate to say it, but it's just how I feel, that it almost was just not quite out of place, but just it didn't hit home exactly the way I feel like these ceremonies should. And it is not at all in fault of the players being on it or the organization, because the Mets do a great job at these things. The Darryl Strawberry apple, come on. That was awesome. Or the strawberry. And I'm glad that we got to see it a couple times, although the game was not great. We'll talk about that in the final segment. But now I'm sort of looking at the criteria that's now been put in place. There's a new standard. The old standard was Hall of Fame with the Mets cap. Now, all right, there's more jerseys that have been retired. So I'm now looking at what has gotten these jerseys retired, the 5 jerseys that got added. What was different about those guys that have allowed them to get this honor, and who else fits that billing? Is there another jersey retirement coming next year after Doc and Darryl? And is it David Wright? Because David Wright is the obvious next jersey to be retired. We knew David Wright's jersey was going to be retired long before his career ended. Okay, so number 5 is going to be up there, and I promise you, my dad and I will be in the ballpark for that one. Okay, I can guarantee you that. But who's next? And so you look at what these guys who have been retired have in common. One thread: championship winning guys. Koosman and Seaver, 69 Mets. Keith, Doc, Darryl, 86 Mets. And then you have Mike Piazza, which is just Hall of Fame worthy player. Or Hall of Famer. Geez, Hall of Fame worthy. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Hall of Famer Mike Piazza, that gets you in. So you look at that type of criteria, being part of a championship winning team or being a Hall of Famer. And I do think that that's a pretty good standard to set, or just having a fantastic Mets career as a homegrown Met, David Wright, right? Wright doesn't fit Hall of Famer. He doesn't fit championship, but he has a lot of records. So who else will fit that billing? Championship? All right, let's look at the 86 Mets. Anybody else getting in? With all due respect to Mookie Wilson and Tim Tuffle and Lenny Dykstra and Kevin Mitchell and name your favorite 86 Met, I don't think there's a lot that are going to get that honor. There's three that you can just at least have a conversation on: Gary Carter, Sid Fernandez, and Ron Darling. And I don't think that Sid Fernandez or Ron Darling ever reached that height as a player that is worthy of a jersey retirement. For Ronnie, it would be a combination of player, broadcaster, and who knows, maybe someday there is just a circle out there for Gary, Keith, and Ron together, or maybe there's one for Gary. And I don't know. There is a chance that as broadcasters, they get that extra honor. But I don't think we're going to see Fernandez or Darling. And there's Gary Carter, which I could very well see the Mets doing next year. I personally think that his Mets career falls a little bit short. 5 years, 4 All-Star appearances is great. Leader of the 86 Mets, one of. I get it if they do decide to retire number 8. I won't begrudge them if they do. But I don't imagine that's coming. It could, though. You go beyond that, though. Who's next after that? Edgardo Alfonso, probably not a good enough career, right? John Franco, the all-time leader in saves, 276. Armando Benitez, more than 100 behind him for second. I think it was 160. I did write an article about this, by the way, that I will put in the episode description. Who will be the next Mets jersey retired? So that is part of the thought exercise I did was writing that article. And by the way, Edwin Diaz, 101 saves. So a long way from catching Franco. Maybe the best closer in Mets history, John Franco, sure. Jersey retired? I doubt it. So then you go to the 2000s, because there's not a lot you could pull from in the 90s after you, of course, already honored Piazza. You go to the 2000s, and David Wright clearly is the guy, but there's one more, and that's Carlos Beltran, who might fit the original criteria. You go into Cooperstown with the Mets cap. But would Mets fans embrace a Carlos Beltran jersey retirement? I think the only way they will is if that happens, if he goes into Cooperstown and they put a Mets logo on his plaque. Now, should he be a Mets Hall of Famer? Should he go into the Hall of Fame as a Met, or should it be a Royal, or should it be no jersey, no team on the cap? Should he go in just with the blank cap on his plaque? I don't know how that's going to shake out. I do think he's a Hall of Famer. He's got 57.1% of the vote in his second trip on the ballot. So very well next year, he could get up to the 75%. It might be year 4. He's getting docked a little bit due to the sign stealing scandal, but I think Beltran is a Hall of Famer. And when you look at his career, there really is not an argument to be made for the Royals, honestly, because it was 7 years in Kansas City, but the first one was not a full season. He won Rookie of the Year in his second season with the Royals, and he still had rookie eligibility. So it was 6 years with the Royals, and he got traded in the 6th year. That was his lone All-Star appearance with the Royals. At the Mets, it was a 7-year contract. Spent the first full 6 years with the Mets. 7th year, he got traded for Zach Wheeler. Still is providing value to the Mets, because Zach Wheeler turned into eventually a comp pick that netted the Mets. I think it was Josh Wolf, who was then part of the package for Francisco Lindor. So in a weird way, that trade still has a lineage in this organization. But getting back to Beltran's case with the Mets, he had, for one, an unbelievable 2006 season that nobody remembers because of the strikeout. But that year, he hit 275, 388 on base, 594 slug, had 41 home runs, 18 stolen bases, drove in 116, won the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger in center field for the Mets. And he was, I think it was a 4-time All-Star in a Mets uniform. His OPS plus 20 points higher as a Met than as a Royal. OPS plus tells you, what a hitter is based on a league average of 100. So significantly better as a Met than a Royal. He has more than 7 wins, or actually it was almost 7 wins when it comes to wins above replacement more as a Met than as a Royal. So again, I think if he goes into Cooperstown with any logo, it is the Mets logo. But I just don't know if they're going to honor him in that way. So I really think if you have to look at all of Mets history and say, all right, what's the next jersey to be retired? I think there's 3 potential ones. It's Gary Carter's number 8. It's Carlos Beltran's number 15. And if neither of those guys get it, it's David Wright's number 5. And if the Mets retire Wright's 5 next year, that might be closing the book because they've sort of done this through like a lineage, right? That's why Koosman was first, then Keith. And then, the Willie Mays thing was sort of just kind of I don't want to say the last second, but that one kind of came out of nowhere. And then after Keith, it's Doc and Darryl. So we'll see. We'll see what is next. But my question for the next segment is, from what we've learned about the Mets retiring jerseys, are there any current Mets that will see their jersey retired? And also, is there any that just left the Mets? I'm thinking about a guy that won some Cy Youngs that would happen after David Wright. So we're going to talk about all those players in the next segment. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. During the Mets game on Sunday, you can do a live same-game parlay. So maybe you want to look at Jose Quintana's strikeouts, take the under. He's not going to strike out a lot of guys. Maybe you like the Mets to score first inning run. You can put that in there. There's a lot of different ways you can play at FanDuel with your same-game parlays. And again, remember, $5 bet. You win that, you're getting $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime some news breaks on the Mets. I'll answer your questions anytime. You can text me comments when you're just frustrated at a Mets game. You also can take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and you will get these starting 9 graphics sent to your phone each day. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so who's next after David Wright? Once you close the book and you go beyond that, who could we see get their jersey retired? And of course, we got to talk about Jacob deGrom. Will deGrom's number 48 get retired? Rookie of the Year, 2-time Cy Young. You look at his career stats and you put it on par with Dwight Gooden, and it's very, very similar. Now, Dwight got a World Series ring. Jacob deGrom did not, but he did win a pennant. And you can look at ERA, strikeout per 9, the most dominant pitcher outside of Tom Seaver in Mets history would be Jacob deGrom. I personally, if I'm ranking my top 10 starting pitchers or just pitchers in Mets history, I got Seaver 1, deGrom 2. Yes, I watched Jacob deGrom. I did not see Dwight Gooden firsthand. I understand if you go back to the 86 Mets and before that when he won Rookie of the Year and you saw his 85 season and you want to say that it's Gooden, I'm not going to fault you for it. You got to watch them both firsthand. Maybe that's the way you see it, and I'm okay with that. But to me, you're splitting hairs. Very close. So if Gooden gets in, I feel like Jacob deGrom should. And it is worth noting, while I don't know how popular number 48 is, 2 seasons since he's left, nobody has worn 48. Just like nobody has worn number 5 since David Wright retired. Now, I will also note that doesn't mean everything, because in the past we saw these jerseys that have now been retired used a lot. Okay. Number 18 was used 20 times before it was retired with Darryl Strawberry today. Number 16 for Dwight Gooden was used by 16 different players. Keith Hernandez, number 17, was used 15 different players. And Jerry Koosman's 36, obviously longer history there, 29 different players. Now, there was no intention to retire any of those jerseys until Steve Cohen entered the fray. So you can't really take that as a guiding light to what's going to happen moving forward. But I do find it interesting that there hasn't been a reliever at any point that's asked for 48 and the Mets just give it to him. I do wonder if that is in their mind at all. So I believe Jacob deGrom should have 48 retired and it should be right next to David Wright, but we'll see. Now, current Mets, there's 3. 4 if you want to throw Edwin Diaz in there, but honestly, relievers, it's so volatile. I just can't get there. So there's 3 right now. And I'm not going to say Francisco Alvarez or Mark Vientos. They're way too early in their careers. It's the main guys. It's Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, and Pete Alonso. Now, if you told me that all these guys are spending the rest of their careers with the Mets, the most likely guy to get his jersey retired is Pete Alonso. And that's the frustrating thing. And that's where the heartstrings come into play when it comes to Pete's impending free agency. Because I can't help but watch Darryl Strawberry's ceremony and then see Pete Alonso talk about it after and think, yeah, man, I want to be in the ballpark 20 years from now watching Pete get his 20 retired. I want to hear him say, let's bleep and go Mets at 50 years old or whatever it is in front of a raucous Citi Field crowd with a World Series ring on his finger, if I'm really dreaming things up. But we don't know if that's going to happen. And it's crazy because he's so close to breaking Darryl Strawberry's home run record. 48 away. Of course, fittingly enough, he hits a home run at the end of that game. Brings that Strawberry up for one more time. He's close. If he plays one more season, if he were to sign the qualifying offer, which he never would, and come back for one more year, he would have it. But he might get traded. It could be 2 months left of the Pete Alonso era for the New York Mets. And that's sad to me. And I think it's because of that. And I'll have plenty of shows leading up into the trade deadline where we're going to talk out the Pete Alonso trade stuff. But that's one of the reasons why I think both sides need each other. I think Pete Alonso should know and should be keenly aware as he's watching these guys get their jersey retired. As a guy that I think probably does value and care about legacy. His legacy lies with the New York Mets. And if he goes and he plays with the Chicago Cubs for the next 5 years after this, his legacy is going to be hollow everywhere. I really do feel like that. I don't think that Pete Alonso, and he might prove me wrong. He might go to Chicago, win a couple World Series, hit 40 home runs a season, and he might go down as a Cub. It's just like, heck, Jacob deGrom might be a Ranger when it's all said and done. I don't know. But to me, that tie, I just wouldn't sever it lightly. I really wouldn't. And I still feel like there's a role the Mets play out this whole scenario. And Pete goes to free agency and he comes back on a deal that's very palatable for the Mets moving forward. And you get to keep a guy that has built a legacy here. But I'll digress on that one. The other 2 are the guys that we can have the conversation about because they aren't going anywhere. And that's Nimmo and Lindor. Now, I think these 2 guys fit in very specific boxes, right? Brandon Nimmo, it is the David Wright angle. Now, David Wright was on a Hall of Fame track before the injuries, but it's the homegrown player that has a lot of the records. But on top of that, if Brandon Nimmo just plays out this contract, right? And if he plays on the pace that he has the last couple of years, he probably would be second to David Wright all time in wins above replacement for the New York Mets. But if he plays it out and the Mets don't win anything and they don't win a World Series, I don't think Brandon Nimmo gets number 9 retired. Now, if he's part of a great 2027 or 2026 New York Mets team that wins it all, then I think Brandon Nimmo with the longevity plus the championship gets in. So I think that component matters to more than anything. Now with Lindor, it's the other side of the coin. Now, not that a championship wouldn't help, but Francisco Lindor is similar to his friend and mentor, Carlos Beltran. He is a get into the Hall of Fame with the Mets cap, get the jersey retired type guy. And I hope that fans appreciate and embrace this guy because he is showing you lately how good he can be. And yet everyone just says, why weren't you good before that? I don't know. Would Francisco Lindor get booed at his jersey retirement? If he did, it's messed up. But I'm just saying, it's weird how Mets fans just can't get themselves to embrace Beltran. And now they can't embrace Lindor. And I don't know what that is because Mike Piazza got embraced. You said Piazza was better, sure, but look at the stats. He really kind of wasn't. In some respects, yes, of course. He was the face of the franchise, and he brought some playoff success in a way that those guys did not. So I understand it, and trust me, I had Piazza posters on my wall. I'm not trying to slight him, and I was in Cooperstown when he got into the Hall of Fame. It's not that I don't appreciate Mike Piazza. I just don't understand why people don't appreciate Beltran and Lindor also. So those are the guys. That's the list. I think moving forward, when you think about what will make this franchise great, it is developing the next guys. You look at the jerseys that have been retired, and then you look at how many Rookie of the Years the Mets have had. Tom Seaver, John Matlack, Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden, Jacob deGrom, Pete Alonso. Those have been the Rookie of the Years. Now, Seaver, Strawberry, Gooden, all retired. Matlack was not, but Kuzman was, and he finished second in the Rookie of the Year in 1968. You can make a case he should have won it, but a guy named Johnny Bench did. But it's when you produce that level of a singular talent. So when's the next time the Mets have a Rookie of the Year that transcends and then lifts the franchise? Is there one coming in the pipeline? Who is it? And can that player be the one that pushes the Mets over the top? Lindor might be this version, this current core's Keith Hernandez or Mike Piazza, the free agent edition that pushes you to a World Series. Who knows? Maybe Pete Alonso gets there one day and he's the homegrown guy that does it. But if you look at the 69 Mets, look at the 86 Mets, the guys that got their jersey retired, they were young in their careers. They weren't further down the road. It was catching that lightning in a bottle. And yeah, they still had good careers beyond the World Championships, but they were at the peak of their powers then. And so it's a big game of what if. You never know. Is Jonah Tong, who's in high A, the guy 4 years from now or 3 years from now? Is Jet Williams the dude next year? Luis Angel Acuna? We won't know until they debut. But it's exciting to think about the future of the New York Mets and what it could be and how that'll blend with the past, the present, all of it. Hopefully this franchise now moving forward will do things right, though. And these guys won't have to wait 20, 30 years, depending on the guy, to get the honor that they deserve. And I don't think that would be the case ever again. So that's one other thing that Steve Cohen has been doing right. Now, there was a baseball game played after the ceremony. I will touch on it and what the Mets have to do on Sunday to win this series. They got to, or all the talk from the last 72 hours is for nothing. So we'll get to all that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your partner is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. With both the Stanley Cup and the NBA Finals just around the corner, make sure you stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports by checking out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. Now, we got a baseball game to talk about on Saturday where Shamania just did not pitch well. If you give up a grand slam, it's a bad day. Granted, he almost got through 6, and he struck out 10, first Met this year to get double-digit strikeouts. So it's not like his stuff was terrible, but just a disastrous third inning when he gave up the grand slam. Then in the 6th inning with 2 outs, he gives up a double and a single, which the single scored the runner, Gabby Moreno. And that marked the end of his day. Josh Walker comes in. There was a pretty brutal play where you had a pass ball, which slammed off them. It's a horrible pitch. hit so hard off the backstop that Nido was able to field it, almost like an outfielder fielding the ball off the wall. And he tried to make a play at third that he shouldn't have, threw the ball into the outfield, a run scored. So that was pretty brutal. And then the Mets just had Josh Walker wear it. So you got to give him credit for doing that for the team. He threw 51 pitches, went through 2 more innings after that 6th, got you all the way up to the 8th, got you all the way up to the 9th. And then Danny Young pitched a scoreless 9th inning. He looks great. But Josh Walker looks like he's on his way down, I would imagine, to get a fresh arm up. And we'll just see exactly who they pick. And, if that arm has any more length to them as far as a length of stay, I should say, in the majors. But Walker, I'm sure, is done after this. And the Mets, I mean, at that point, they were just fighting an uphill battle all game. Give a couple guys credit. For one, Mark Vientos ripped a home run. We got to talk about Vientos next week at some point, because what he's doing offensively has just been so exciting. He has taken this opportunity and he is really grabbing onto it, and you love to see it. So his home run in the 5th was pretty much the only real offense to speak of for a while. But you got to give the Mets some credit for the 9th inning. They showed some fight. Vientos doing a good job with the swinging bunts. He gets on with a single. Then Harrison Bader, double. And then a ground up by Tomas Nido brings in a run. Jose Iglesias, though, want to give him a shout out for hustling on a ground ball to third. Looked like a routine play. Eugenio Suarez certainly felt like it. It's a game that they had in hand. They looked at the signature on the ball, went to make the throw, and Iglesias can still move at 34 years old, booked it down the line and beat it out. And Carlos Mendoza said after the game, that's showing you how to play baseball the right way. So I really think he's a great clubhouse guy to have on this team. He really could help them within the margins on some things. And look, when it comes to winning a series, it's a war of attrition at times. By getting on, not only did the Mets score a run there, but then Pete Alonso rips a home run. And then they bring in the closer, Paul Sewald, to get the final out, which, I mean, come on. I'm just a little surprised they did that. I know it was getting out of hand, but he still had a pretty big cushion. So kind of silly that the Diamondbacks went there. Regardless, those are the little things where maybe Sewald's a little more tired if he has a save opportunity on Sunday. The Mets might be able to get him. But this is a game the Mets have to win. If you want that players' meaning to continue to mean something, and you really feel like this team has something left in them, because we've been getting that kind of thrown at us over the last couple of days, that there is a new energy, and Carlos Mendoza talking about it, between the players talking about it, to seeing just sort of the Mets reshape their roster and try to make a push, and they don't want to give up on their season. They've let that be known to the media through different stories you can read right now, that they still want to compete this year. Well, as a ball club, you got to go out and win this series, because if you split a 4-game set, even though you won the first 2, means nothing if you lose the second 2. And all of a sudden, you're right back to 11 games under. The 10 games under again right now. Now you win, you get to 9 games under, but you win a 4-game set. You go into Washington, you handle business. And then all of a sudden, you have a little bit of momentum. Now, they're going to have to go on a run at some point. They're going to have to win 7-8 games in a row to climb out of the hole that they put themselves in. But it starts with winning series. And they got to win this series. It's Jose Quintana versus Brandon Pfaadt. Don't love that pitching matchup for the Mets, but we'll see what happens. We'll see if they can pull it off. I'll be back, though, for a show tomorrow. That'll be the last show that's going to be on video this week, because I will be going out to DC. If you watch on YouTube, don't worry. There'll be audio-only shows where you'll just see the thumbnail throughout the entire show. You'll still get the podcast if that is how you watch the show or listen to the show. But Sunday's show, I will still be here in my home studio to break down the final game of this series, to look ahead to the DC series. So I appreciate all of you who will tune in. If you're listening on the audio side, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Trying to make a push to 9,000 subs. I appreciate all of you who subscribe. If you want to follow me on X, you can do so at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube to check out Locked On Sports today to be up to date on all the latest in the world of sports.